Research has shown that gamers looking to build a gaming PC are willing to spend around 33,000 to 35,000 Rand on the entire build. In 2022, 60% of gamers who built a new rig were willing to spend over 30,000 Rand on parts. So what does 30,000 Rand get you exactly? That was the goal for this project. I wanted to see what parts you can pick up, where you would have to cut costs, and in the end, what benchmarks you can expect from a PC built between 30,000 and 35,000 Rand. This content is based on a PC we built that totals exactly 34,968 Rand. So it is just shy of the 35,000 Rand target. Keep in mind that it doesn't include a monitor, accessories, or a Windows license. Before I get started, I do want to thank Gigabyte for the help with this PC build. The brand sent over the Gigabyte B760 Master Aorus motherboard to add to this build. The motherboard's cost was factored into the overall build, even though we didn't technically pay for it. We also only had a budget of 30,000 Rand ourselves, so they really came through and helped pull this off. Speaking of which, the motherboard was the first thing we started with on this build. The Gigabyte B760 Aorus Master costs between 5,499 Rand and 5,999, depending on where you get it. I factored in its highest price for this build at 5,999. The B760 is a DDR4 LGA 1700 socket motherboard that supports both Intel 12th Gen and Intel 13th Gen CPUs. The reason why we opted for this board is mainly due to its Wi-Fi and Bluetooth support. You really can't go without that these days on a PC. Also, if you're building a new rig, you might as well just get these features from the start rather than having to buy a separate dongle or PCIe card later down the line. The board packs quite a number of features and includes a fully covered MOSFET heatsink for those who want to push the thermals on your CPU up a bit. It also packs 3 PCIe 4.0 slots and 4 M.2 slots for all the SSD expansions you need. I first unboxed the motherboard and set it aside to prepare for the PC case. This marked the perfect opportunity to install the RAM and the additional components. I started off with the RAM. We picked up the Corsair 32GB Vengeance 3600MHz kit. This RAM kit costs 1,980 Rand and looks pretty cool. It features customizable RGB on the top and comes with a dual heatsink shell to keep things cool. Next was the SSD. We went with the Corsair 4 Series MP600 SSD and picked up a 1TB model. It comes with the heatsink installed already, so we had to remove the PCIe heatsink on the B760 in order to use it. Of course, this meant that once removed, we could not put it back due to the extra thickness on the SSD. If you're someone who wants the SSD hidden away, be sure to get a heatsink free model so you can put the motherboard plate back on. Installing the SSD was quite simple. We just had to peel off the protective plastic, slot it into the M.2 slot and push it down firmly to lock the plastic cap in place. No screws were needed to lock the SSD in place on the B760. The latch also allows you to quickly remove the SSD without any hassle. Next was the CPU. We were originally going to go for a 12th Gen i5, but considering the price difference between the 13th Gen, it made sense to put the extra cash in and upgrade it. I've already covered the Intel Core i5 13600K on the channel a few times already, and it holds up pretty well. If anything, it would be the gamer's Intel choice when looking for a PC for this cost. Anything higher might be tough to fit into this budget. I do benchmark this PC later on and test the CPU under baseline clock conditions, so you'll see just how this rig performs thanks to this 13th Gen Core i5. But the usual installation process takes place. We unboxed it, unhinged the CPU bracket, slotted in the chip and closed it up. Now that we had the motherboard ready to go, we needed to prepare the case. I always recommend a NZXT for low-cost PC cases. For under 2,000 Rand, this NZXT H710i cost 1,970 Rand. There was a lot of value for money here. These cases come with great cooling support, the latest case ports, a clean minimal design, and are pretty approachable when it comes to installation. You'll also be able to pick the same model up in black, white and black, and a black and red version which we picked up. The case is likely the most amount of work you'll have to put in during building a PC. You have to remove the range of faces, unscrew metal brackets, position the motherboard, add the power supply and then wire it all together. Of course, you also have to switch it on and hope it works. Unless you've worked with a certain case before, chances are you'll get thrown a curveball somewhere along the line which you weren't expecting. These hurdles can set your PC build back a few hours if you're not ready for them. After we screwed in the motherboard, the next component was the power supply. There's really nothing fancy about most power supplies on the market. You can spend a fortune on ones that have RGB and displays, but if you're simple, a basic one will work just fine. This model cost us 1,880 Rand. We went with the NZXT C Series C850 power supply. As the name suggests, it is an 850 unit that will power everything on the computer. It is also modular, which means all the cables plug into the unit, and you can have a cleaner setup depending on how many things you need to plug in. The main attraction of this power supply, believe it or not, was its packaging. It came with a cool purple bag that housed all the cables. It might be a toiletry bag. I actually don't know what NZXT wanted us to do with this bag, but if you had to put all your toiletries in it when you went on holiday, I won't judge you. It just seems like this bag was made for that. Now that the power supply was in alongside the motherboard, it was time for the cooler to go in before wiring it all up. We went with the Corsair iCUE H150R cooler. It is a 360mm cooler that has all the modern features you can look for. It cost us 2,590 Rand. Remember the hurdles I mentioned before? Well, this is where our first hurdle arrived. The Corsair iCUE H150R doesn't really talk nicely to the motherboard. At first we wanted to install the cooler at the top of the case, but due to the motherboard's heatsinks around the CPU, it simply didn't fit. There was the tiniest lip of heatsink that jutted out at the top, which prevented the fan rack on the NZXT case from sitting flush with the case. The one fan on the cooler got in the way. So after some headaches and about an hour of the day wasted, we decided to give up and just put the cooler on the front. This means removing all the pre-installed fans from the case and swapping them around with the cooler on top. Surprisingly, this was the only issue we encountered. For the first time in my PC building career, I plugged in all the power cables, RGB and cooling wires, and they just worked for the first time. Everything spoke to the PC and all the lights came on. I was quite chuffed with myself. We installed the GPU last and it was quite simple and easy. We went with the AMD Gigabyte Radeon RX 6750 OC GPU. I have reviewed the GPU in full in the past. I'll leave the link for the review in the description below. It is a fantastic 1440p card that is also quite cost efficient at 12,999 Rand. We ran the awesome Returnal benchmark on 1080p and cranked everything to the max. The test gave us an average FPS of 60, a max FPS of 91 and a minimum FPS of 37. Testing Cyberpunk 2077 on 1080p with Ray Tracing Ultra, it gave us an average FPS of 107, a max FPS of 232 and a minimum FPS of 41. The 13th Gen Core i5 also performed quite well. During Cinebench R20 tests, I measured a max of 89 degrees on the unit. This is with its multi-core clocked at 5.1 GHz. Cinebench R20 also gave us the following scores. I also ran some 3D Mark tests for the fun of things. So in the end, we took 35,000 Rand and built quite a decent gaming PC that is capable of 1440p 60 FPS gaming. Sure, some of the latest games, Returnal included, might need some tweaking around in the settings in order to get the performance where you want it to be, but generally speaking, this PC should last you a few years. I hope this was helpful for those looking for a PC on a specific budget. I also hope to return to this project in the months ahead and perhaps try to build another one later this year and see if anything has changed. As usual, thanks for watching, and again huge thanks to Gigabyte for sending through the B760 to add to this build. If you have any questions, let me know down below, and please do consider liking and subbing for more content like this. Until next time, farewell.